Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, September 7th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the California Republican Party and the National Republican Party putting, as it is here in Yahoo News, bracing for catastrophe in California in the 2026 midterm elections amidst California Proposition 50, the proposition in place that is set to redraw the congressional maps ahead of the 2026 midterm elections, a ballot initiative that California voters will make a decision on come November 4th, 2025, that will decide whether or not the maps in place will be temporarily suspended, allowing for the Democratic supermajority legislature to draw brand new maps ahead of the 2026 year and ultimately usher in additional seats for the Democrats as they look to pick up opportunities in response to Texas's redistricting that they just signed into law just weeks ago in this state, California, at odds with Republicans on the national stage, and now Republicans are fearful. Now, I actually intended to make this video about an entirely separate article and a slightly different angle here, talking about, this actually being something that we are in the lead up to, and that was also, what we discussed and what we will discuss here, that many Republicans, not only in California but across the country, that have lost previous elections are shying away from running again in 2026 because they know that it's not going to be their year. The whole telos of the original argument was that people like Michelle Steele, who had served in Congress before and lost her re-elect in 2024 by just around 600 votes in a congressional district of nearly 1 million, she certainly had room to grow in the next cycle, but not under the current pretenses of this election that tell us that Democrats are likely to do quite well. And it also came into a point where now we are seeing the Republicans across the state are realizing that it doesn't really look good for them at any point. Because Texas decided to go full force, California is responding. Now, what we see here, according to a Republican delegate, is that they are referring to the new drawing of the map as a guillotine, saying that we being Republicans, we won't be able to pick up the pieces and move forward. I mean, we're making little headway, but this would be a catastrophe. That's exactly what they're fearful for, because it is showing that Republicans are vulnerable in this state in the same way Democrats were and are in the state of Texas. Now, Proposition 50, again, is a response to the state of Texas, and it also is quite interesting because it was never even floated before Texas decided to redraw. Fox News has made a lot of different indications and arguably blatantly false statements alongside many other Republican groups saying that Democrats are the ones who began this back and forth with redistricting, but that isn't true. Anybody who has half a brain can look and see that Texas began this battle, and California's response was only to equalize the playing field. Now, Missouri and Indiana are desperately trying to claw for attention in redrawing their maps as well, and it makes sense. It's something that can prop up some of these more mainstream Republicans that are on the back burner, that don't feel like they're too big on the national stage, that might be trying to appease President Trump, or just adamantly believe that this is something that they want to do because they are also and too fearful about where the state of the race is for their political party. And so the only way they know how to win is by redrawing the maps here. Now, in the state of California, Republicans bracing for catastrophe, I think, is right. What they learned from the redraw in Texas is that not everything is going to be as locked in and set in stone for the GOP as they otherwise expected. Democrats had only 13 seats in the state of Texas, and 2 of them were within vulnerable territory. Under a red wave year, Democrats probably would lose the additional 2 seats in a Democratic presidential midterm. But with redrawing the maps here, Democrats are guaranteed to lose 3 seats with the opportunity of losing 2 more. Democrats could hold out with Cuellar, assuming that there is no, legal battle or legal standing there to remove him from the ballot. And then also to Gonzalez, right now probably isn't the favorite to win. All the expert ratings have it as a lean Republican seat, but lean Republican in a Dem midterm is certainly within reach, assuming things go that direction. So I expect Republicans to, at minimum, gain 3 seats in Texas. They could gain an additional 2 more, but that caps them out to about +5. But under the right circumstances for Democrats, caps them out to just +3. That's a problem for Republicans in Texas and across the country, because let's say California proposes and passes a map in the legislature that takes the Republicans' 9 seats down to just 4. Well, Democrats actually would end up with the net gain in the national redistricting wars if it's just Texas and California. But also, there is a possibility that as we start to see us get closer to the redistricting, that Democrats draw an even more egregious gerrymander that takes Republicans, because now we're seeing, right, Missouri set to redraw, Indiana set to redraw. These are states that if they do, Republicans would be looking at, under the right circumstances, +7. Republicans have 9 seats in California. There is a way, legally speaking, in California, which I don't think Democrats would take up, but there is a way to draw a 51-1 map where in the entire California delegation, there would be one singular Republican. I know it sounds crazy, but it absolutely is something that can happen. And if it does, would counteract and negate every single gain by Republicans in the redistricting wars. Even if they threw in Kansas, which is looking at maybe Nebraska, is thinking maybe if California goes for the gusto, which again, I don't think they will, and I think it actually would be something, if they don't do it right, could be short-sighted. But that is a possibility. And Republicans are bracing for impact because they know that Newsom is not screwing around. Newsom seemed, in the beginning, Republicans had made this argument, he's bluffing. He doesn't mean it when he says he's going to redraw Texas, go full force. California will never do it. Because they have to go through the voters, their voters will never do it. And the data initially said, that's right. What we saw in the first poll from Politico was that under the, full context and writing the poll in a way that makes it feel like it's against the will of the voters, sure, voters are going to say they disagree. But ever since Newsom has been ramping up this strategy and this means of convincing his base to back Proposition 50, look at how these numbers turned out. When this first was being gauged, on August 4th, Emerson College fielded a poll for 2 days across the state. Just 33.2% of respondents said that they agreed with the proposition. 42%, nearly half the state, said that they had not made up their mind. 33% were on board. Then it became 36 to 64. The no was beating the yeses by 28 points in the state, by a massive, massive amount. Thinking about, not 28 points, 18 points, but you get the point. Massive amounts, double digits. It would have looked like Republicans won in a landslide. But as there was more education, as there was more campaigning, as there was more involvement from Newsom and the national Democratic team, look at how these numbers have evolved. So the most recent poll from a Republican internal that used what the test ballot did for Proposition 50, what did it find? That 54% of respondents say, I agree. And how many disapprove? Just 29%. 9 points less than the respective vote percentage that Donald Trump received in the last election in this state. Wow. What that tells us is that the opposition is not nearly as strong as it once was just 2 months ago. And looking at where we are, Republicans are right to be bracing for catastrophe, because that is exactly what this is. A redrawn California, which now at this point starts to seem inevitable, is setting the stage for Democrats to potentially gain upwards 5 seats in California, maybe even more, but also make it so that many of these competitive races from the last cycle, I think this is something that we don't really talk about. What the Texas Republicans haven't really been facing are any competitive races. There are 0 districts here that Democrats see as potential opportunities and did not see any in 2022, did not see any in 2024. Republicans in Texas, for the most part, have not had to set up the necessary infrastructure to win in swing districts because their districts don't swing. But in California, a lot of these seats that Republicans hold rely on competitive districts, and they will be the first to go. But also, too, under the right year for the GOP, swing California by 5 points to the right, and they skyrocket to 15 seats in the state. What we will likely see with the redraw is Democrats taking a lot of their toss-up districts, where Adam Gray won by less than 0.1%, where Josh Harder won by 3.6%, where George Whitesides won by 2.7%, where all these different races were won by narrow amounts. What they'll do is make them Harris plus 10, 15, 20 districts. All these seats that the NRCC that says, okay, maybe we won't win them in 2026, But maybe we could in 2028 with the right Republican nominee for president, which, don't get me wrong, can be done because what happened in 2022, exactly that. Many of these districts that Democrats won in 24 had gone to the GOP in the election prior. But looking at 2024, what this would do would remove all of the competitive seats from being Democratic seats. All of the ones that would be within contention would be Republican held. And all of these seats the Democrats had normally funneled tens of millions of dollars in because the media markets in Orange County are expensive. It costs money to run in San Diego. There are very real reasons as to why, these races were prime targets for the GOP because they knew they would put Democrats playing defense. It would force Democrats to spend a lot of money on races they otherwise might not have to. And now with a redraw, what it would essentially do is take where Democrats normally contest, and where Republicans do too, and make them all safe Democratic seats, making it so Democrats don't have to worry about that ever again, at least not until 2030. And that would make a big deal. It'd save Democrats $100 million across the congressional seats. It'd lock up and shore up many of these seats, not to mention reduce the number of Republican-held seats by over half. So, when we look at the way the California and national GOP look at this, bracing for impact and bracing for a catastrophe is exactly right. Because that's what Democrats have done and did in Texas, and now Republicans are seeing it too. And based on how far Gavin Newsom and his political team is willing to go, we will see. Because as it stands right now, a great position for the Democratic governor, a great position for California Democrats, and we will see exactly what the map looks like after Proposition 50 passes the California voters and implements a new map for the 2026 midterms and beyond. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.